I walk into my own kitchen and freeze because Vanessa is sitting at my table with a neat stack of papers, and my husband Scott plus his mother Beverly are standing there like I'm the one who doesn't belong here. Beverly's voice comes out sweet as poison when she says, "We already agreed, Paula. You'll sign so we can protect the family." Scott slides a ballpoint pen across the wooden surface toward me and won't look me in the eye, which tells me everything I need to know before I even glance down at what's in front of me. The document has official-looking headers and dense paragraphs, but the summary is simple enough that even my tired brain can understand it. I'd be giving someone else control of our finances and the house. Temporarily, they say. But I've been a nurse long enough to know that temporary has a way of becoming permanent when you're not paying attention. My purse is still on my shoulder, and my scrubs smell like antiseptic and 12-hour shifts, and I realize they waited until I got home to ambush me like this. The kitchen light feels too bright suddenly, and I notice they've already moved things around. Vanessa's laptop is open on my counter. Beverly's coat is on my chair. I don't sit down, even though my feet are screaming after being on the hospital floor all day. My voice shakes, but I force the words out anyway. I'm not signing anything today. Vanessa smiles at me with her perfect teeth and says, "Then we'll do this the hard way. Let me tell you who I am, so you understand why this moment feels like the ground opening up beneath me. I'm Paula, 52 years old, nurse manager at County General, the kind of person who keeps everything running quietly so other people can be loud and messy. I've known Vanessa for 15 years now, ever since she moved into the neighborhood and started showing up at holiday dinners and church fundraisers and every single one of my kids' birthday parties. She's not some stranger off the street. She's family adjacent, the kind of friend who knows where you keep your spare key and what brand of coffee you drink and exactly which words will hurt you most. Beverly has always called me emotional whenever I disagree with her. And lately, she's added confused to the list because my father died last month and left me a small inheritance that nobody expected. They talk about me like I'm fragile china that might shatter if handled roughly, but really they just want me pliable and easy to control. I remember every single time Beverly dismissed my concerns, every moment Scott sided with his mother over me, every instance Vanessa offered unsolicited advice about my life. The kitchen feels smaller than it did this morning, like the walls moved inward while I was saving lives and checking medication charts. I realize this whole setup is about money and control, plain and simple. Scott finally speaks, and the words crack me open like an egg. Vanessa says you can't be trusted with it. Vanessa leans forward like she's about to share something helpful and offers what she calls a solution. Speaking in that calm, professional voice she uses when she wants to sound like the only adult in the room. She'll manage my inheritance, she says, and help us catch up on bills because Scott has been so stressed lately about finances. She talks about interest rates and consolidation and smart planning, speaking for me like I'm not standing right here in my own kitchen still wearing my hospital badge. What makes my skin go cold is when she mentions specific numbers, how much is in my savings account, what my bi-weekly paycheck amounts to, the exact balance my father left me. And I realize Vanessa already knows private information that I never shared with her. These aren't guesses or estimates. These are numbers she shouldn't have access to unless someone gave them to her. She even knows about the automatic deposit schedule and my retirement account balance, details that should be completely private. I set my purse down on the counter very carefully and ask in my calmest voice, "How do you know those numbers, Vanessa?" She glances at Scott like she's waiting for him to handle this part of the script. Scott answers for her, and his voice is defensive already. "I showed her. She needed to see the full picture to help us." Scott admits he has credit card debt, and when I ask how much he says a number that makes my vision blur at the edges. Big debt. The kind you don't accumulate in a month or even 6 months. The kind that comes from years of spending money we apparently didn't have while I was working double shifts and clipping coupons. He explains that Vanessa is helping him consolidate everything into one manageable payment. Like she's doing us this enormous favor instead of sticking her hands into our private business. Beverly jumps in right on cue, her voice dripping with disappointment when she says, "If Paula really loved this family, she'd stop being so selfish and think about what's best for everyone." The room tilts sideways, because this isn't about financial planning or helping Scott with some temporary cash flow problem. This is a coordinated ambush that they planned together, probably over coffee at Vanessa's house while I was checking vitals and updating patient files. I can see it all clearly now. How they've been meeting without me, discussing my money like it's theirs. I straighten my spine and look at Scott directly. "Show me every statement. Credit cards, loans, everything. Right now." Vanessa's smile doesn't reach her eyes when she says, "We don't have to do that. We already filed what we needed to get the process started." Vanessa leans in closer across my kitchen table and tells me she's worried about me. And that single word lands like a weapon because I know exactly how it'll be used. She suggests that I've been grieving unpredictably since my father passed, that maybe my coworkers at the hospital have noticed me being distracted or emotional, that it might be affecting my judgment about important decisions. Beverly nods along like a judge delivering a verdict, her face arranged in an expression of concerned motherly love that makes me want to scream. Scott just stands there silent, examining his shoes like they're the most fascinating thing in the world. And his silence might hurt worse than anything else, because it means he's already chosen his side. The air in the kitchen feels thick and hard to breathe, and I realize if I stay here one more minute, I'm going to say something I can't take back, or maybe break down completely. And I refuse to give them that satisfaction. My hands start trembling, and I grip the counter edge to steady myself. I grab my purse and walk out to my car without another word. Hands shaking so badly, I can barely get the key in the ignition. I drive to the hospital even though my shift ended an hour ago, and I sit in the parking lot in my car just shaking for 20 minutes straight. Then I stop shaking, and I start thinking clearly for the first time since I walked into that kitchen. My phone buzzes with a text from my supervisor. "Can you come to HR at 10 tomorrow morning?" The HR office smells like vanilla air freshener and anxiety. And the woman across the desk from me, Helen from Human Resources, tells me they received a concerned call about my well-being and my access to medication in my role as nurse manager. I feel my blood turn to ice water because this accusation is deadly to my reputation and my career. The kind of thing that gets investigated and documented and follows you forever, even if it's completely false. I keep my voice steady and professional when I ask for specifics about who called and what exactly was said. But Helen won't tell me the caller's name because it was submitted as a confidential concern for employee welfare. She uses phrases I recognize though, words about grieving processes and emotional stability, and being overwhelmed by responsibility. And I've heard Vanessa use those exact same phrases when she talks about people she thinks need help managing their lives. The accusations are vague enough to sound plausible, but specific enough to plant seeds of doubt. I tell Helen very clearly that I'd like everything documented in writing, and I want my response officially recorded that these allegations are false, and I believe they're part of a personal conflict. Helen shifts in her chair uncomfortably and says quietly, "There's also an anonymous report about financial concerns and possible elder exploitation involving your late father." I call a lawyer from the hospital parking lot with my hands still trembling against the steering wheel, looking up family law attorneys on my phone until I find one with good reviews named June Adler. Her voice on the phone is calm and direct, no nonsense, exactly what I need right now, when everything else feels like it's spinning out of control. June tells me to do 3 specific things. Don't sign anything they put in front of me, no matter how much pressure they apply. Don't argue or get emotional because they'll use it against me, and document absolutely everything with dates and times and witnesses whenever possible. She says something that sticks with me. You win this kind of situation by being boring and exact, not by being right and loud. Her words make sense in a way nothing else has today. I start a timeline notebook that same night at the kitchen table after Scott goes to bed, writing down everything I can remember from the past few weeks. Every conversation with Vanessa, every comment from Beverly, every time Scott acted strange about money. June calls me back the next morning and asks one question that changes everything in my head. Paula, whose name is on the house deed, both of yours or just one? I always assumed the house was ours together because we bought it as a married couple 17 years ago. But June runs a title search and calls me back with news that makes my stomach drop. The deed has Scott's name only, no joint ownership, which means legally I have no claim to the house I've lived in and maintained and paid bills for all these years. I try to remember the closing, and June asks me to think carefully about who handled the paperwork. And suddenly I see Beverly sitting at our kitchen table back then with a stack of documents, telling me where to sign because I'd just worked a double shift and was too exhausted to read every page. She said she'd handled real estate before and knew how to make the process easier. And I trusted her, because she was my mother-in-law, and why wouldn't I trust family? Vanessa knew this detail about the house deed, and Beverly definitely knew, because she's the one who arranged it. Which means I'm not just being pressured to sign over my inheritance, I'm being positioned to be removed entirely from everything I thought was mine. The realization hits me like a physical blow. June's voice gets serious on the phone. Paula, you need to secure your income records and any important documents tonight. Don't wait. I go looking for my folder as soon as I get home. The expandable file folder where I keep my father's will, and the inheritance letter from his attorney, and our marriage certificate, and all the other papers that prove who I am and what I'm entitled to. I check the filing cabinet in the hallway where I always keep it, then the desk in the bedroom, then the closet shelf, going through boxes with increasing panic because the folder is just gone. Scott claims he hasn't seen it when I ask him, his face blank and unhelpful. And when Beverly stops by later that afternoon, she suggests that I misplace things when I'm worked up and emotional, like losing important legal documents is just something scattered people do. Vanessa actually offers to help me search through the house, walking through my rooms and opening my drawers like she owns the place. And I want to scream at all of them to get out, but I force myself to stay calm. I watch her touching my things and I know she's looking for something specific. I don't accuse anyone of anything because June told me not to make accusations I can't prove yet. Instead, I say very clearly, nobody touches anything else. I'm making a list of what's missing and when I last saw it. My daughter Claire whispers to me in the hallway when the others are in the living room. Mom, I think I saw Vanessa leaving yesterday with a big tote bag. Claire shows me a photo on her phone that she took without really thinking about it. Just a casual picture from the front window yesterday afternoon, showing Vanessa loading stuff into her car trunk. When we zoom in on the image, I can see the corner of my expandable folder sticking out of a canvas tote bag. That distinctive blue color I bought specifically so I could find it easily. My heart starts pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears, but I keep my voice calm when I tell Claire she did exactly the right thing by showing me this. She's 19 and home from college for the summer, and she's scared because she can feel something bad happening in our family, but doesn't understand what yet. I can see the worry in her eyes, and I hate that she's being pulled into this mess. I saved the photo to 3 different places: my phone, my email, and a cloud backup. I forward the photo to June immediately with a text explaining when it was taken and what's visible in the image. June replies within 5 minutes. Don't confront Vanessa about this yet. Let's document it properly and let her make her next move. Sometimes the best strategy is patience. Scott tells me we're weeks away from losing everything, his voice full of panic and drama, like we're about to be thrown into the street tomorrow. Vanessa presents me with a packet labeled urgent in red letters across the top, full of spreadsheets and payment schedules and worst-case scenario projections about foreclosure and bankruptcy. I take the whole packet to June without signing anything, and she goes through it page by page with a highlighter, pointing out half-truths and inflated numbers and assumptions that aren't based on our actual financial situation. The packet is designed to scare me into immediate action, to make me so terrified of losing our home that I'll sign whatever they put in front of me, just to make the fear stop, June shows me where Vanessa manipulated numbers and created fictional scenarios that have no basis in reality. June taps her pen against one particular page and says, "This isn't a financial plan, Paula. This is coercion, dressed up in spreadsheet format." Then June finds something else in the packet that makes her eyebrows go up. There's a power of attorney draft already prepared with blank signature lines, and the address listed for the attorney, in fact, is Vanessa's office building downtown. Beverly invites me for tea at her condo, and I know it's not really about tea, but I go anyway, because refusing would just give her ammunition to call me difficult. She doesn't offer me anything to drink when I arrive, just sits me down in her formal living room and tells me that Scott deserves peace after everything he's been through. And if I won't cooperate and be reasonable, then she'll help him move on to a better situation. She calls me ungrateful for everything the family has done for me, unstable because of my grief, lucky that anyone puts up with my difficult personality and demanding job schedule. Her words are chosen carefully to hit every insecurity she's watched me develop over 23 years of marriage. Every moment when I felt like I wasn't good enough or smart enough or supportive enough. She mentions specific incidents from years ago, things I thought were forgotten, using them as weapons against me now. I stand up in the middle of her living room and say out loud for the first time what I've been thinking. "You're trying to erase me from my own life." Beverly smiles at me with her perfectly lipsticked mouth and says, "No, honey. We're not trying to erase you. We're trying to replace you with someone more cooperative." At the community center fundraiser that I helped organize, Vanessa accidentally mentions to a group of women from church that I'm not doing well and asks them to pray for me during this difficult time. I watch heads turn in my direction, see pity and suspicion spread across faces I've known for years. Watch people start whispering behind their hands. Scott is standing right there when it happens, and he doesn't correct her or defend me, just looks uncomfortable and changes the subject to the silent auction items. The humiliation burns through my chest because Vanessa is spreading personal information about my mental state to my community, painting me as someone who's falling apart and needs intervention. And every person who hears it will remember that story, even if it gets corrected later. I see women I've worked with for years looking at me differently, their expressions shifting from friendship to concern to something that looks like fear. I walk across the room with my spine straight and my voice clear, and I say loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I'm doing fine, Vanessa. Please stop spreading personal stories about my private life to people without my permission." Vanessa's smile never breaks or falters when she responds, "Oh, Paula, you're kind of proving my point right now with this reaction." June runs a standard background check on Vanessa's financial consulting business, just routine research that any lawyer would do. And she finds complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau. Small complaints, mostly. Clients claiming errors in paperwork or missing refunds that were promised, nothing proven in court, but enough of a pattern to show that Vanessa's business practices aren't as clean as she pretends. June tells me we're not going to attack Vanessa's character or spread rumors, but we are going to prepare for whatever comes next by having information ready. I decide to request copies of any documents that have my signature or my financial information from Vanessa's office, sending a formal written request through certified mail so there's proof of delivery. The request is professional and specific, listing exactly what documents I want and giving her a reasonable deadline to respond. Vanessa refuses to provide the documents and tells Scott I'm harassing her professionally, trying to damage her business reputation because I'm jealous of her success. I come home from my Thursday evening shift at the hospital and my key doesn't work in the front door lock. I try it 3 times thinking maybe I'm tired and using the wrong key, but no. The locks have been changed while I was at work. Scott opens the door after I ring the doorbell like a visitor to my own house, and he acts like this is completely normal. Beverly is sitting in my living room on my couch drinking my tea, and Vanessa's jacket is draped over my kitchen chair. They tell me very calmly that they needed a reset, that changing the locks was about creating healthy boundaries and protecting the household during a stressful transition period. The way they're all sitting there waiting for me makes it clear this was planned, coordinated, another ambush. I step back onto my own porch and pull out my phone to call the police. Not because I want anyone arrested, but because I need an official incident report, and I need to retrieve my belongings peacefully with a witness. The officer who arrives is young and professional, and he asks Scott directly, "Sir, is this woman being denied entry to her legal residence?" Scott panics when the police officer asks that question, stumbling over his words about misunderstandings and temporary arrangements. He unlocks the door fully and steps aside, and Vanessa tries to speak over me to explain to the officer that this is a family matter and they were just trying to help. I keep my voice factual and calm when I tell the officer that I live here, my property is inside, the locks were changed without my knowledge while I was at work, and I have concerns about financial coercion. The officer documents everything in his incident report. The changed locks, the presence of Vanessa and Beverly, my statement about feeling unsafe and controlled. He's thorough and professional, asking specific questions and writing down exact details. I pack a bag with clothes and toiletries and important papers while the officer waits in the living room, and then I leave by my own choice because I won't stay somewhere I can be locked out or trapped. That night, my son Noah, who's 17, texts me, "Dad says you abandoned us. Is that true?" Scott tells the kids I left because I'm overwhelmed and can't handle normal family stress right now, and Beverly implies to anyone who'll listen that I'm having some kind of breakdown. Vanessa offers to help the kids adjust to the situation, like she's their new stable adult figure. My daughter Claire meets me at the Main Street diner and tells me that Noah's being fed a completely different story than what actually happened, that he thinks I chose to leave and doesn't understand about the locks or the coercion. She's crying as she tells me this, angry at her father and grandmother for lying, but also scared about what's happening to our family. I write Noah a calm message that I read out loud to Claire first to make sure it sounds right. "I love you. I'm safe. I didn't abandon you. I'll explain everything when you're ready to hear my side." Claire's hands shake when she shows me text messages between Beverly and Scott discussing their plans. "Mom," she says quietly, "they're talking about selling the house." June checks the county records and confirms my worst fear. The house is being prepped for sale, with a market analysis already completed and a listing agent lined up. The agent is a friend of Vanessa's from her business networking group, which means this whole thing has been coordinated for weeks probably. Beverly wants to liquidate assets for Scott's future, which really means she wants to cash out the house and split the money before I can claim any legal right to it in a divorce. The timing is too perfect to be coincidental. They planned this carefully, down to changing the locks to force me out. June sends a formal notice to the listing agent and their brokerage that same day. There's a pending marital dispute, concerns about coercion and fraud, and a legal request to pause any sale until the situation is resolved properly. Vanessa retaliates within 48 hours by filing an emergency protective order, claiming I've been financially abusive towards Scott and Beverly and that I'm a danger to family assets. I sit in family court on a Wednesday morning while Vanessa plays the concerned friend who just wants what's best for everyone. Beverly plays the worried mother protecting her son, and Scott plays the conflicted husband caught in the middle. They describe me as unstable and irrational, someone who screams and makes threats and can't be trusted with money or important decisions. Vanessa brings printed screenshots of my text messages taken out of context, and Beverly cries actual tears when she talks about how worried she is about the grandchildren. Their performance is polished and convincing, and I can see some people in the courtroom believing them. June stands up with a folder in her hands and says calmly to the judge, "Your Honor, we have documentation that tells a very different story." The judge looks at June with sharp eyes and asks the question that changes the direction of the hearing. "Where is the inheritance that's supposedly being mismanaged currently being held?" I reveal to the court that my father's inheritance is in a protected trust account at First National Bank under my name only, with clear documentation and legal counsel from the estate attorney who handled my father's will. I never gave Vanessa control or access to any of the money, despite weeks of pressure and manipulation. The judge's face changes when June presents the bank statements and the timeline of Vanessa's attempts to gain power of attorney, because the story Vanessa told about me being reckless with family money doesn't match the reality of me protecting assets carefully. June also presents the incident report from when I was locked out of my house, and the certified mail receipt showing I requested my documents back from Vanessa, and suddenly the narrative of unstable wife falls apart under actual evidence. The judge starts asking pointed questions that Vanessa can't answer properly. The judge denies the emergency protective order and warns all parties against further harassment or attempts to control assets without proper legal authority. Outside the courtroom, Vanessa corners me near the elevators and hisses quietly so no one else can hear. Fine. Then we'll just destroy you another way. June files for discovery and subpoenas communications between Vanessa, Beverly, and Scott, which means they have to turn over emails and text messages related to the financial situation. Suddenly, Vanessa finds my missing folder and offers to return it, like she's doing me this generous favor, claiming it got mixed up with her files by accident during one of her visits. The folder looks disturbed when I get it back, though. Pages are out of order, some documents have copy marks on them, like they were scanned, and the whole thing feels like it's been gone through thoroughly. Some pages have fingerprints and smudges that weren't there before. June has the folder examined by someone who specializes in document authentication and chain of custody issues, taking photos of every page and logging inconsistencies. Then June spots something that makes her call me immediately. There's a photocopy of an authorization form with what looks like my signature at the bottom, but I don't recognize the document at all. The form June found is an authorization giving Vanessa access to request financial information on my behalf, and it's supposedly signed by me, except I never signed any such thing. June doesn't make public accusations yet because that would tip them off, but she quietly sends the document to a forensic examiner who specializes in signature analysis and forgery detection. The examiner takes 3 days to complete the analysis, comparing the signature on the authorization to known genuine signatures from my hospital employment records and my driver's license application. She uses microscopes and computer analysis to examine every detail of the signature. The examiner's report concludes that the signature was likely manipulated using a digital overlay technique, taking a real signature from another document and transferring it onto the authorization form. June's voice is steady when she calls to tell me the results. Now we stop playing defense and we go on offense. June files a formal complaint with the state licensing board that oversees financial consultants, including evidence of the forged authorization and the pattern of complaints from other clients. The listing agent who is going to sell our house suddenly distances themselves from the whole situation, sending a letter to Scott saying they can't represent the property during disputed proceedings. A former client of Vanessa's named Angela hears about the investigation and reaches out to June with her own story about missing paperwork and unexplained fees, willing to provide testimony if needed. Scott starts to realize that Vanessa isn't the expert savior he thought she was. She's a liability who's dragged him into something that could have legal consequences. I can hear the panic in his voice when he calls. He calls me for the first time in weeks without Beverly on speakerphone coaching him, and his voice sounds smaller than I've ever heard it. Paula, what did Vanessa actually do? I take a breath before answering. You're asking me that too late, Scott, but you can still tell the truth about what you know. We agree to meet with a professional mediator, someone neutral who can witness the conversation and keep it from exploding into screaming or lies. June is there as my attorney, and Scott brings a lawyer too, but not Vanessa and not Beverly. He asked them to stay away for this meeting. I lay out everything piece by piece. The HR complaint that almost cost me my job, the changed locks in the police report, the coercion documents designed to scare me into signing away control, the photo of Vanessa taking my folder, the forged authorization that forensics confirmed was manipulated. I don't yell or cry or insult anyone. I just stack facts on the table until the weight of them becomes impossible to ignore or explain away. The mediator takes notes and watches Scott's face change as he realizes the full scope of what happened. Scott breaks somewhere in the middle of my presentation, admitting that Vanessa orchestrated the plan, and Beverly pushed him to go along with it, and he let it happen because it seemed easier than standing up to his mother. Vanessa, who showed up anyway and is standing in the hallway, tries one last manipulation when the mediator steps out. "I did all of this for the family, Paula." I look at her directly and say what I should have said months ago. "No, Vanessa, you did this for control and money. Don't pretend it was love." I file for divorce with terms that protect me and make sure the kids are provided for fairly, asking for my share of assets accumulated during the marriage and compensation for the documented harm caused by the lockout and false reports to my employer. The house sale is stopped permanently by court order, and eventually a settlement is reached where I receive my rightful portion, plus my legal fees and damages. Beverly loses her influence over Scott when he finally moves into his own apartment and has to learn what paying bills and making decisions actually costs. Vanessa's financial consulting business collapses over the next year, not because I destroyed it, but because the licensing investigation found multiple violations, and other clients came forward with their own complaints once they knew they weren't alone. The state board revokes her license, and she faces civil lawsuits from former clients. Months later, Noah asks to meet me for coffee, and when we sit down, he says quietly, "I'm sorry I believed them without asking you first." I tell him he's allowed to learn and grow and change his mind, that being manipulated doesn't make him a bad person. I buy a modest 2-bedroom house in my name only with money from the settlement, hang my father's photo in the hallway where I'll see it every day, and exhale for the first time in what feels like years. The house is small, but it's mine. Every lock, every deed, every decision. Claire helps me move in, and we paint the walls colors I actually like. And that's what happens when a family friend turns against you. You don't win by becoming them or stooping to their level. You win by letting the truth do what lies can't ever do: hold up under light.